The Han Dynasty is remembered as one of China's golden ages, a period of territorial expansion, cultural consolidation, and administrative sophistication. Yet beneath its apparent stability existed a highly engineered economic system, carefully designed to concentrate power in the hands of the state. The Han Empire did not rely solely on taxation or tribute. Instead, it constructed a centralized model where key industries were brought under direct government control. This decision reshaped markets, altered incentives, and defined the empire's long-term resilience. To understand the Han dynasty's rise and eventual strain, one must examine not its emperors or armies first, but the economic architecture that sustained imperial authority. From its inception, the Han state recognized that political stability depended on predictable revenue. Earlier dynasties had collapsed under fragmented authority and private monopolies controlled by powerful families. The Han response was structural: reduce private economic power and elevate the state as the primary economic actor. Fiscal policy was not reactive. It was strategic. The imperial court viewed markets not as independent systems, but as instruments to be managed. This philosophy laid the groundwork for one of the earliest large-scale state monopoly systems in recorded history. Salt and iron were not ordinary commodities. They were essential to daily life, military supply, and agricultural productivity. By monopolizing these industries, the Han state ensured a steady stream of income, independent of harvest cycles or land taxes. Private producers were displaced or absorbed. Prices were set administratively. Distribution followed imperial priorities. In economic terms, the state transformed necessity into leverage. Control over basic inputs translated directly into control over society itself. These monopolies allowed the empire to bypass traditional taxation constraints. Rather than negotiating with local elites or increasing land taxes, the state generated profit through production and trade. This reduced short-term resistance and stabilized imperial finances, but it also removed competitive pressure. Efficiency was no longer determined by markets, but by bureaucracy. The system worked as long as administrative discipline remained strong. Private merchants bore the cost. Entrepreneurship declined. Innovation slowed. With the most profitable sectors removed from private hands, capital accumulation outside the state became increasingly difficult. The economy narrowed. Risk-taking diminished. What emerged was a stable but rigid structure, optimized for control, not adaptability. Centralization reshaped geography itself. Trade routes became administrative corridors. Distribution followed political logic rather than economic efficiency. Regions were integrated vertically into the imperial system, but horizontally disconnected from one another. Local specialization weakened. Dependence on the center intensified. For peasants, the monopoly system offered predictability. Prices were stable. Supply was guaranteed. In the short term, this reduced volatility and unrest. Yet it also locked rural producers into fixed roles. Productivity gains offered little reward. Economic mobility stalled. Stability was purchased at the cost of dynamism. The military benefited directly. Standardized weapons, reliable supplies, and predictable logistics strengthened imperial defense. Economically, the monopoly system functioned as an early form of state-led industrial policy. Resources were allocated according to strategic need, not profit. In times of expansion, this model proved remarkably effective, but every centralized system carries hidden costs. Administration expanded continuously. Oversight multiplied. Information slowed as it moved upward. Corruption became harder to detect. Efficiency declined quietly year after year. The monopoly system demanded constant managerial competence, a requirement no empire can sustain indefinitely. Internal debates emerged. Confucian scholars criticized monopolies as morally corrosive and economically distortive. They argued that the state was crowding out society itself. Legalist administrators defended control as necessary for order. The Han economy became an ideological battleground between stability and flexibility. Without competition, quality deteriorated. Costs rose. Consumers absorbed inefficiencies through fixed pricing. What had once been a revenue engine became a fiscal burden. The monopoly system no longer generated surplus. It merely redistributed stagnation. Markets responded predictably. Informal trade expanded. Smuggling increased. Economic activity moved underground, beyond state visibility. Control weakened not through rebellion, but through evasion. The more rigid the system became, the more creativity escaped it. Revenues declined. Administrative costs remained. The fiscal equation reversed. What once stabilized the empire now accelerated strain. The Han state discovered the paradox of monopolies. They deliver control early, but fragility later. By the late Han period, economic rigidity mirrored political decay. The monopoly system had reshaped society too deeply to dismantle easily. Adaptation came too late. The architecture of control outlived its usefulness and outlasted the dynasty itself. As the monopoly system aged, its weaknesses became structural. State workshops grew inefficient. Skilled labor declined. Incentives disappeared. Workers produced to meet quotas, not excellence. Without competitive pressure, stagnation hardened into routine. What had once been an engine of imperial strength became an administrative obligation, expensive, inflexible, and increasingly detached from real demand. The system no longer adapted, it endured. Enforcement costs rose sharply. Inspectors traveled farther, oversaw more operations, and controlled fewer results. Information lag widened between center and periphery. Economic reality changed faster than policy could respond. Centralization magnified delay, turning minor inefficiencies into systemic failures. As state capacity weakened, local elites re-emerged. Wealth concentrated outside official channels. Informal power replaced formal authority. The monopoly system designed to suppress private dominance unintentionally recreated it, without transparency or accountability. Smuggling expanded because it was rational. Price controls distorted incentives. Underground trade offered efficiency the state could no longer provide. Economic logic quietly overpowered administrative design. Control slipped not through rebellion, but arithmetic. Rural dissatisfaction grew. Fixed obligations collided with declining returns. Farmers bore the cost of inefficiency they could not influence. Economic pressure translated into social strain. Stability, once guaranteed by predictability, unraveled into resentment. The court debated reform. Some argued for liberalization. Others feared loss of control. The system was too entrenched to reverse smoothly. Reform threatened collapse. Rigidity ensured decline. The Han state faced a classic institutional trap. Fiscal pressure intensified. Monopolies no longer funded the state. They drained it. Administrative costs exceeded returns. The economic foundation eroded quietly but decisively. Military funding weakened. Public confidence followed. Economic fragmentation accelerated political fragmentation. Regions adapted independently. Central authority faded. The monopoly system, built to unify, now exposed division. Collapse did not arrive suddenly. It emerged from compounding inefficiencies. The state did not fail because it lacked power, but because it used power to suppress adaptation. When the dynasty fell, its economic system collapsed with it. The monopolies vanished, replaced by localized exchange. Complexity dissolved. Control gave way to survival. The Han monopoly system offers a permanent lesson. State control can stabilize markets, but only briefly. Over time, rigidity outpaces resilience. Economic systems fail not from malice, but from misaligned incentives. When adaptation disappears, decline becomes inevitable. The Han Dynasty did not collapse despite its economic system. It collapsed because of it. History remembers the Han as a golden age. Economics reveals it as a warning. Control can build empires, but only flexibility can preserve them.